Good afternoon, and welcome. Welcome to the garden. Welcome to Garden Conversations with Rose. We're still in the month of March, and because of that, we're focusing on women. Today, I am very, very pleased to have with me a strong woman, someone I've known for over 50 years. She is a mother, she is an educator, she is a writer, a poet, and most recently an author and a graduate of UWI Cave Hill. She's also a Calypso judge, among so many other things. She has a passion for words, a love for reading, and likes to see progress. So today I am welcoming in the garden my longtime friend, Miss Veli Nicholas Benter. Veli, I want to say thank you so much for joining me in the garden and for consenting for us to have this little chat that we can impact so many persons. So those of you out there in our affiliate groups, such as Trauma Transformers, SSS, and so many others, we want to tell you that you will definitely enjoy this session this afternoon. So we are focusing, as we said earlier, on woman using the tagline, she is woman, I am woman, be bold, be vibrant, be you. And we're also thinking about things that a woman goes through throughout her lifetime. So we're thinking of the time she has to worry, how she displays her wisdom. We're thinking about her worth. We're thinking of her words, and we're thinking of the wars that she goes through. So today, as we begin with Veli, Veli is going to tell us what she thinks about when she hears the word, I am woman. So Veli, what do you say? What do you think about when you hear, I am woman? What does that mean for you?
Okay, let me first begin by saying thank you for inviting me into your verdant garden. It's my delight being here. And as Rosie said, we are commemorating Women's Month, and it's my pleasure to join her as another strong woman. Now, when I hear that word, first thing comes to mind is resilience. Resilience comes to mind when I hear that word, woman. I am woman, and resilience, particularly we West Indian women, we are known to be resilient because of all the troubles we have gone through, and we are still going through, based on past events. The slave trauma is still with us. We are still suffering from the traumas of slavery. And so it is not easy. It has never been easy for the Caribbean woman, the West Indian woman, to make it in life. And so added to all the other things, I mean, we have to go through. It only takes a strong woman to go through and come out victorious at the end. So I am woman. To me, it means I am resilient as a West Indian woman.
Definitely. And I love it. And indeed, I will concur that we have all gone through so much. I like the idea of resilience. It speaks to us not giving up at all on what our dreams are despite our circumstances. Now, in addition to that, the idea of being resilient, we know too that as a woman, there are many parts of us. So we have our good sides, we have our bad sides, we have the moments when we're upset, we're angry, we lash out at others, when we are pulled down and dragged down, and we also have our moments that we soar as eagles. So when we think of a woman using her words or even thinking about what she's worrying about, how would you say that you have dealt with those aspects in your life? And even to think of how you would have shown your wisdom and to indeed identify that your worth is something that you really appreciate. What would you say in that regard?
I hope I get, I got everything. I am woman, in terms of, personally, um, I am woman in this 21st century. I am one of these women who do not wait on somebody else to validate me. I do not wait on the other the sex to validate me. And so I am woman means also to me, I am who I say I am. I am what I think. I am my word. And so I have lived up to that. I am my word. And I give myself worth. My words doesn't come from outside of me. And so I am woman also and encapsulate the whole idea of me asserting myself as a woman, being
Okay.
proactive, taking the bull by the horn. And so uh, at the end of it all, whatever I have achieved in life has been based on the assertions, the decisions I have made, the choices I have made. And me as a writer and as a mother, my word, I have made my word my bond, and I stick to my word. And so I have realized in life, if you want to really succeed, especially as a woman in this world, which is basically still patriarchal, the
Mhm.
man rules the still, you have to be decisive, you have to be assertive. And so when you have set yourself goals, you have to stick to them. I mean, it's not going to be hunky dory. You're going to be prepared. You have to be prepared as a woman for all the eventualities because as a mother, our day, as mothers, our day is never predictable. I mean, it's so unpredictable because we wear so many hats: mom, lawyer, doctor, nurse, teacher, everything. So as women, we have to be aware that even if we have set ourselves goals, there's always a possibility of our goals being deferred, being delayed because of the other people in our lives we have to take care of. So although we want our word to be our bond, to stand by our word, but sometimes we have to compromise a little. We have to see to other people and then go back to our word. So for me, my word, my word, and my word, they are intrinsically linked. Okay, they're not separate from each other. They're all part of me, of me. My wisdom, my word, my words, they're all part of me that makes me who you see here. And so my wisdom, my wisdom over the years has come from the experiences I've had looking back in hindsight and seeing the trials and tribulations and how I have overcome those hurdles. These are lessons I've learned and my wisdom, the wisdom I now um, have, I now possess, uh, is based on the sum total of all my experiences. And based on that wisdom, I can impart knowledge to the younger one because I see myself as a person who has been there, done that, see the world, and I can impart some knowledge, some words of caution to those who come after me. So my word, my words, my wisdom are all part of me, all part of the woman that I am. I am woman. I am woman. I am my word. I am my word. I am my wisdom.
Indeed, and thank you, Veli. So for those of us out there who are watching and listening, I think you need to take a little page out of Sister Veli's book and learn that your worth is
Pun intended.
important, of course. And you can indeed go back to your word and realize that despite what comes your way, you can forge ahead when you think of yourself being woman. Now, the juicy part of our little tete-a-tete here with Veli is all about to come to you. So I would have said earlier that Veli is a recent author. She's a recent author of a book entitled Poisoned Arrows. Now, normally when we think of arrows as a woman, we're thinking about the Cupid arrow. You know, normally at Valentine's or other times, we're thinking of that little nice little red little heart, the arrows that Cupid sends to our heart from our lover or whatever. We aren't talking about any Cupid arrow today. We are gonna go, when once Veli gets into the meat of the matter, we're gonna learn all about women. And the thing to note is that this book of hers does talk a lot about the women. In her book, you're going to see a lot of similarities with us now as women nowadays, you're going to see a lot of parallels, you're going to see a lot of comparisons, and maybe contrast as well. We're going to learn a lot about the woman. I am woman, all about how a woman is bold, vibrant, and herself, the things she would have gone through. So I'm just going to let Veli introduce a little bit about her book, what led her to write that book, why did she choose the title, and then she'll talk a little about some of her favorite characters in the book and how what they went through parallels or even compares to what we ourselves go through right now. So Vel is going to tell us a little bit about those arrows, not the Cupid ones. Let's give it up to
Thank
Vel.
you. Yes, my book, it's a book of fiction, basically. It's history, fictionalized. The book is based on historical events that took place in the Caribbean during the early years of colonization. The name is Poison Arrow. And my inspiration came from my, I love history. And so for my exhaustive research into Antigua's history, the history of Dominica and the other islands, that little seed just germinated, and I said, yeah, I should write something. Because looking back at my school days, even my college days, um, most of the history that we have been taught about ourselves um, have not been written by us. So it's other people telling us our story. And this is one of the deficits in the Caribbean, the whole Caribbean archives of our history. Um, I don't think that we write enough about ourselves. And so, what I've sought to do in this book is a little bit of what I call historical reconstruction. That's taking what we have and sort of dissecting it, looking at it, not tearing it down, but looking very closely at what it's saying in an effort to perhaps rewrite it, or to gain more details, more knowledge about the history that's being told. And so historical reconstruction, I've engaged in that in this book. And in this book particularly, I look at the lives of the natives who were on the island before the visitors came from Europe. And I also look at the dynamics, the social dynamics between two of the main groups that we all learned about at school, namely the Caribs and the Arawaks. Well, the Caribs call themselves the Kalinagos. And even that tells a lot. Who do we say we are, and what do they say we are? This can be there can be a discrepancy between what they say about us and what they say about ourselves. So I say, in this book, I'm going to focus on the natives, give them a voice. So in my historical reconstruction of the narrative, the historical narrative, I know about the Caribs and the Arawaks. I chose to focus my attention on the females because rarely do we ever read about the females in those times. And so I said, you know what? I am going to focus on the females, give them a voice because they were basically muted throughout history. I want to know. I mean, I'm going to step into the shoes of those women and try to figure out how they would have felt, what they would have done, whom they would have loved, to really get a deeper insight into the lives of our native islanders or islanders. And so this is how Poisoned Arrows came about. And the name Poisoned Arrows is very significant to the story. As Rosamond said, we are all very familiar with Cupid arrow, romance. But this one is a little different. It signifies the bad blood, the division, the bad experiences that the encounters between and among those groups created. And so the arrow is symbolic of separation, division, and of love, really love, and poisoned, well, the bad blood, the bad experiences that the group experienced in the encounter. Basically, that's it. And so, poison arrows, the main characters are women, as I said earlier. Focus is on the women and the experiences. And this story is told in the first person. So it's one of the women telling her story to another person. And she was an Arawak woman who was initially captured as a little girl. After she was a
Mm.
princess, an Arawak princess on the Arawak island of Siba, which we now call Saba. And she was carefree. Her father was a chief, so she had a maid. I mean, she was well to do. She had no care in the world. And at the
Mm.
age of 12, there came those, um, uh, uh, the Kalinagos, because that was the life. In those days, the Kalinagos and the Arawak people, they roamed the Caribbean waters. They had encounters. That's where they lived with them and played. The sea, the Caribbean Sea was a playground. And so
Mhm.
they had the exchanges, friendly, unfriendly. But on this particular day, when the pirates came, they didn't come for peace. They came to raid. And so they
Mm.
raided the island, took the beautiful ladies and girls as the trophy of conquest, and took them to another island, which is St. Kitts, where they had a stronghold. So from Sabre, Zamba, who's telling the story, along with Barbie, another main character, um, they are taken, kidnapped and taken to St. Kitts from Sabre. And they on St. Kitts living as a slave wife as of the Kalinago warriors. Another group of visitors came, and that was the English, the colonizers, right there. So Thomas Warner came as a colonizer under the sea, um, he settled on St. Kitts. But when these new people came, they found two groups. Well, they found these people. They all saw them. I mean, the English saw these as one people, the men and the women. And if you read certain historical narratives, they would tell you that the men spoke a language different from the women. So here it is. They have assumed that these people are one people. So all the Caribbean people, um, they cut from the same cloth. And so there was no distinction. They thought they were Carib men and Carib women, but the Carib women spoke a different language, and that was a misconception. So they actually had Carib men and Arawak women on the island, but to the British, they were one people. They didn't know the difference, but they just thought, yeah, these, the women spoke a different language. And so this is one of the things that I spoke about earlier in another interview. Um, this is what they've told us about,
Mhm.
but what do we say about ourselves?
Yes,
Okay, so there is a need for historical retrospection
definitely.
to get to the
Yes.
bottom of things. So decades after we find out, hey, there were two kinds of people,
Two
two different
different
cultures
people.
of people,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so my ladies are the ones, well, Zamba
Mhm.
is the one telling the story. So she moved from Sabre as a little girl of 12 to St. Kitts. And then in 1632, when the English decided to expand the boundaries to colonize the other islands, neighboring islands, using St. Kitts as the base, he sent his son, Edward, with his colonizing party to Antigua. And
Mhm.
Zamba was one of the ladies. Zamba and Barbie Zamba was one of the ladies taken to Antigua. So her friend Barbie was left behind on St. Kitts,
Hmm.
and she traveled with the colonizing party to Antigua with Edward Warner. And then a few years after, there was another Kalinago raid on Antigua, on the settlement in Antigua, and she was kidnapped and taken to Dominica. So she did a bit of island hopping.
Yes.
So she's the one best. I'm chosen. I chose her best to tell her story because she covered a wide span from Sabre 10 kids,
Antigua,
Antigua,
Dominica.
Dominica. And she's telling the story um, when she's in the mid 40s. She's in Dominica at that time, and she's telling the story to her children um, about what happened to her. And so we hear her voice. Her voice is very prominent in the book. And so we can get an idea of feel of how these were actual human beings like us, and they have stories to tell. And here she is telling her story, but her story is within the framework of what we already know, historical narratives. So although the book is a book of fiction, but the fiction is within that historical framework. So it wears the mask of fiction. Okay, it wears the mask of fiction, but its matrix is still in the historical narrative.
Something
It's
struck me.
completely fixated.
Sorry, I'm sorry. So something struck me when you were talking, when you said it is very important that people may think how they want to think of us, but there is a distinction between what they think and who we think we really are. And I just wanted to reiterate that point to even all those persons out there who are watching. It is very important because as a woman, as Veli would have said, as a woman, we go through so many things. And sometimes our situations cause people to view us in a particular way. But we need to know who we are. And despite the odds, despite our social standing, it is very, very crucial that we understand our worth. Now, you also said something. You said that Zamba, I believe, am I correct? Zamba is the lady, the main one. By the time she would have got to Dominica, she was in her 40s. I think that's what I heard.
Yes.
So here is a mature woman having gone through so many trials, so many different ups and downs, changes within her own lifetime. And here it is that she can tell the story to her children, I believe, and to others.
Her grandchildren, yes.
Grandchildren. That is a telling thing for us as women. We need to ensure that we pass on oral things to our children that are important, that they can understand from whence we came and they can understand where they are headed. So I just need to plug that in because it really struck me. Now, as you continue, I'm going to let you continue a little bit to talk about Zamba and even Barbie. And I would be rather interested to find out if there were any other similarities between those women and us with regards to their love lives, with regards to how much support they could be to others, and even again, their resilience, because you said when you hear I am woman, the idea, the feeling, the strand that comes to you is that of resilience. So I'm very interested to hear now, and for our audience as well, those of us who are listening and watching, to hear about those ladies, how their interactions went.
Okay, for these two ladies, based on the story, they had very few choices. Okay, because the men, it was a man's world.
Yeah.
And the men controlled, the men dominated. Here it is, you have the Englishmen came from England, and English was patriarchal in those days. And the women had to know their places. The women were mainly there for procreation and looking after the husband. And so they came and transported, they came to the Caribbean and imposed that type of value on this Caribbean society that they were part of shaping and creating. So in that historical setting where the man ruled, women, I mean native women, I mean these are whom I call the doubly marginalized. First, they were women already marginalized. They had to do as the men told them to, and they were native. I mean, who listened? Who cared about what the native had to say? So here it is. These women were doubly marginalized, and so they had very few choices. The choices were limited. I mean, they had to depend on the men for their daily living, economics wise. They had to depend on the men, and they were moved by at will. the men moved them at will. They couldn't say, no, I'm staying back, I'm not going to Dominica. They had to go, they had no choice.
Mhm.
And I mean, it is still so for some of us women. I mean, the economic situation, I mean, we have made ourselves prisoners of the men on whom we depend. In Barbie's and Zamba's case, I mean, they had no choice. There was nothing else going on. But
Mhm.
um, today, when we look at it, our women, we have more choices, but based on our perhaps our level of education, based on our upbringing, which is very, very important, how we've been nurtured at home,
Mhm.
we have made ourselves prisoners also, just as Barbie and Zamba were prisoners, economic prisoners. They depended on the men for their livelihood, for everything. And so you see how the comparison.
Mhm.
These ladies had no choice. But our women in this present day, I think we have more choices. But as I said earlier, we can't paint everybody with the same brush
Mhm.
because we are all raised in different households, and our households we have different
Yes.
value systems in our households. So you have some women who have this very low self-esteem, and a lot of them learned it from what they saw happening at home with their parents. And so when they grow and they're adults and they have to make the decision, they chose to be so docile and to just depend on the man, and they become like economic prisoners, just as Barbie and Zamba were. Okay, so it is more in the world, in our modern day world, society has changed, and so um, the play field is not the same, not even. It's not the same as obtained in in that historical past where there was hardly any other thing going on. But nurture means a lot.
Mhm.
The way you've been nurtured, the way you've been brought up, and so we as women, we have to make sure that we we make the best, we create the best situation, the best environment for our children to grow up and to grow into productive, um, um, socially fit children, so that many of the dangers out there in life, they will be able to avoid it
Mhm.
based on what you have taught them at home. So as women, we have an awesome role um, in nurturing our families, nurturing our children, so that they'll be able to avoid some of the pitfalls
Mhm.
that we have encountered in our work as women.
Now, that is very telling, and indeed, it is very, very different. And so we need, as you said, to do differently. But would you say also that in spite of the limited choices that those women had, Barbie and Zamba, would you say that they found among themselves or between themselves any source of support that sustained them? And how important do you think the idea of support among women is in indeed keeping us a little sane in all the crazy that goes on around us? What can you say?
In Yes, there's I must say something about Barbie.
Mm-hmm,
Barbie was a very strong-willed Arab woman.
mm-hmm,
She actually challenged her husband and
mm-hmm,
challenged the other Arab Kalinago men when
mm-hmm,
she found out that they were mistreating the Kalinago women. She
mm,
confronted them as she was the girlfriend, the paramour of the Kalinago chief, so she had some power.
mm-hmm,
Um, sort of, she exercised it,
mm,
and her he wasn't pleased, but she exercised it because she had that strong will.
mm-hmm,
But at the end, her will was broken
mm,
because she made a mistake,
mm,
and she never forgave herself for it,
mm,
and so she thought about it, and she wasn't herself after that.
mm,
Uh, but Zamba, during her time on Dominica, when she was kidnapped from Antigua. The governor's wife was also kidnapped.
Mhm.
The governor of Antigua, Edward's wife, was kidnapped.
Mhm.
Him and his son, and her son,
Mhm.
along with Zamba. So Zamba and Cynthia, the governor's wife, bonded. They became like blood, I mean, soul sisters on Dominica. So here it is, you have an English woman
Mhm.
and a native woman, and they became very close because of the situation in which they were as slave wives, captured. Um, Edward's wife lost her daughter during the raid, the
Mhm.
Kalinago raid on Antigua, and Zamba Zamba had lost her lover also. And so they had that in common. They had loss, they suffered loss during the raid, and both of them became slave wives also.
Mhm.
So during their stay on Dominica, they bonded very well.
Mm.
So they had that support system between the two. And so that also helped Zamba to have a lot more confidence because her daughter, she had a daughter born at the Great House on Antigua with an Englishman. Her child was fathered by an Englishman, but during that raid, she was separated from that child. So she was separated from her daughter. But she had the hope that um, the people on Antigua, the English people, Edward's household, would have looked after her daughter for her. So unlike Zamba, who never really had um, a strong family support, uh, Zamba, Zamba had that support with Cynthia, from Cynthia, who was the governor's kidnapped wife. So, and because of that strong bond that they shared, she grew to become, she became very confident.
Mhm.
She became very not outspoken, very self-confident, and she knew she was a princess. She had that at the back of her mind all the time. She knew she was a princess, and she decided that she was gonna act the part. She was not gonna be she's not gonna consider herself as a slave, so to speak, but as a servant to Cynthia. And so she she felt very sure, self-assured. She was self-assured, and so that is saying that wherever we are in life, whether we are home in our comfort zone or we are overseas elsewhere, forming social bonds, networking, having a support system is very important in helping us to go through whatever challenges we are going through. Because we are social beings, and having a social network can help you to overcome some of the challenges that you face in life. And that is so important for women. It is
Mm.
so important for women because we bond in different ways. We bond different from the males.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, yes, so even in those times, past bygone days, you can see that bonding between women was so very important
Mhm.
for even the mental well-being of that
Yes.
person. But because Barbie, she was left. I mean, she was taken to Dominica, right?
Mhm.
She was taken to Dominica after Thomas died on St. Kitts. After Thomas died on St. Kitts in 1649,
Mhm.
Thomas's real wife, his English wife, she detested Barbie because Barbie was the
Mhm.
paramour. And so as soon as Thomas died, his wife sent Barbie to Dominica, and that is where she and Zamba met
Good
again.
friends.
Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So all that being detested, not having that support system on St. Kitts, being hated by
Mhm.
Thomas's, her lover's wife, and
Yes.
all that, and no other women to really talk to. I mean, she it took a toll on her mentally.
Mhm.
And so when she ended up in Dominica, that was it for her. She lost it because that
Mm.
was the last island she had wanted to be.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because in 1626, she was the one who told um, her lover, the Englishman, Thomas Warner, about the Kalinago's plan to raid the settlement.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, hundreds of Kalinago men from Dominica and Nevis and St. Kitts were killed because of she telling her lover, English lover, what the Kalinagos had planned to do. So she never forgave herself for that. And now
Mm.
to be sent to Dominica, the land of Kalinago men.
Mm.
Oh,
It's as if she was in
and
the lion's den.
yes, she would have preferred
Yeah.
death than to be
Huh.
sent to Dominica, the
Right.
stronghold of the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, whom she blamed herself for the death,
Mm-hmm.
the genocide of those hundreds of Kalinago men.
Mm.
So after Zamba left, she had no confidence, because
Mm.
Zamba, among the spoke, she was a confident. They were close friends on 10K. But after Zamba was taken to Antigua, she didn't have that close female friend to
Mm-hmm.
confide in anymore. And now here she had that hostile English woman who didn't like
Mm-hmm.
her. And so being sent to Dominica, to the land of
Mm.
the Palinagos,
That
that
goes.
was it for her. So she lost
Mm-hmm.
it mentally.
Mm.
And unlike unlike Zamba, who had that strong companion, he had
Mm-hmm.
companionship, he had somebody to confide in and exchange ideas with on
Yes.
Dominica.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it
So
is important.
it is important. And so
Yeah.
through all of this, so just before I continue, I just want to stop and appeal to all of you out there who are watching and listening. You need to go out on Amazon and purchase Poisoned Arrows. It fits in so well into this month of March where we are celebrating women. And as we looked at International Women's Day, it is so important that you go out there and not only will you be supporting another sister, another woman, you will get to read in that book from the little tidbits that Veli just gave us all about women, what they themselves have gone through, how what they've gone through compares to what we ourselves are going through, and how we can overcome. Because the thing is, resilience, how we think of ourselves, as Belly would have said earlier, our worth, that takes us through. Yes, it is true that sometimes we go under, as she would have just mentioned, that Bobby would have lost it. And it occurs at times, yes, some of us as women who just can't take it any longer. But ultimately, for the majority of us, we have something, as she said too, whereas they didn't have so many choices, we today have so many more choices. So a common thread that I notice going through all of this, not only with our theme, but what Belly would have said from her book, is that it's important to be resilient. It is important to leave a legacy for our children by what we say to them, by the example that we lead. It's important to find support irrespective of where you are. You need to get support, and it is important to rise above your circumstances. It is difficult, but it isn't impossible. And certainly, more than ever, we need to be confident in ourselves. We need to know who we are. We need to understand our worth. Our worth. No, I wish we could continue for so much longer, but we know we are on a little time restriction. So very unfortunately, we may have to, we are going to have to cut short. But what I will say to you, Veli, that I really do appreciate your effort here with us. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate how you have forged ahead. You have indeed shown how resilient you can be. I look back and think about those two little girls from non-school, for those of us who are listening out there, who are Dominicans and more so from the Portsmouth area. Veli and I went to the St. John's Primary School, commonly known as non-school, the best school ever. And then we would have gone on to
Yes.
PSS, yes, where we did enjoy ourselves
Oh yes.
immensely. We did. And I do appreciate you, Veli. I really do. I really, really do. We have, I think in our lives, there are some things that we went through that are similar. We might not have spoken about many things, but I believe we
Mhm.
have gone through similar things and we have forged ahead. And the thing to note is that even as mature women, we were able to go ahead and move higher up the educational rung. I got my first degree in my 30s. You just got yours in your 50s. It's not a problem. We were still mature women.
That's right.
Um, we are
Experience means a lot.
experienced women.
It's a teacher. Yeah. Experience is a
Exactly.
teacher.
And so we have done well for ourselves. We are trying our best with
Definitely.
our own children, Velly. I appreciate you. I urge you to continue being that voice, using your words to influence positively, because you are indeed doing that. So as we close, I just need you to leave a little lasting word, an advice, a bit of advice you wish to give to all women out there, bearing in mind we think of ourselves, I am woman. What can you say to those women out there?
And before I say that, I must say that I do appreciate you also.
Thank
I do
you.
appreciate you. Thank you for your friendship throughout those years. Yes. Yes. And so for our ladies listening, I think I will leave these words with you. Define yourself. You are best able to define who you are.
Yes.
Okay. You are who you say you are. You
Yes.
know your worth. You know your wisdom. You know what wars you're fighting. So only you know best how to
Yes.
define yourself. All right. And tell your story. Tell it yourself. You tell it best. And one wise person once said that there's no reality, just versions of
Mm,
reality. It
mm,
depends on who is telling the story. So
mm.
we tell our stories. We should tell our stories. We do that best, and we know our worth.
Veli, I thank you for those of us in the garden. We appreciate you being with us, spending this little short time with us this afternoon. And indeed, I am encouraging you one more time to go out there on Amazon and purchase a copy of Poison Arrows. Once the paperback copies are available, you can contact Veli. I'm sure she will make it known
Yes,
to you on the various platforms. And indeed, in the garden, we let you know also how you can go about it.
certainly.
So once again, Veli, I am grateful for our little tete-a-tete this afternoon. And to all our listeners out there in the garden, remember to lounge back in your chair, sip on your drink, invite your friend over, and stay in the garden. Indeed, it was a pleasure having you.
Always nice being in the garden.
Thank you, my dear friend. Okay, bye-bye,
You're welcome.
everyone. Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.